Welcome to the Onveos podcast, where we share actionable insights on web design, SEO, paid advertising, and AI automation. Each episode is focused on practical strategies you can apply immediately to build smarter systems, attract better traffic, and scale your business with confidence.
It's fantastic to be back. And honestly, looking at the topic today, I feel like we're standing on the edge of a cliff, looking down at a landscape that has completely changed almost overnight.
That is exactly how it feels. I was digging through the digital archives to prepare for this, going back to, well, the ancient history of 2023, and I found this quote from Andrej Karpathy. For those who don't remember, he was one of the absolute giants at OpenAI back during that first big boom.
A legendary figure in the field, absolutely.
Right. And he said something that sounded, I don't know, almost too simple at the time. He said, "The hottest new programming language is English."
It's a classic line. I remember when he said that, a lot of hardcore engineers, they kind of rolled their eyes. You thought, sure, English is great, but it doesn't compile.
Exactly. But here we are, January 25th, 2026, and that statement has aged like a fine wine. In fact, it's basically the reality we live in now. We've moved past just coding in the traditional sense of, syntax and semicolons. We're now in the era of what the internet has affectionately dubbed vibe coding.
Vibe coding. I love that term. It sounds so incredibly casual. It implies that you're just, hanging out with your computer, tossing ideas back and forth, maybe sipping a coffee, and boom, software just happens.
It does. It suggests a level of ease that we have never, ever associated with software engineering before.
But is it really that simple?
Well, that's the million-dollar question we're digging into today. Because vibe coding sounds fun, but we need to know if it actually works. So today, we're exploring the massive spectrum of AI in web development as it stands right now in early 2026.
And when we say spectrum, we really mean it. This isn't just one type of tool. On one end, you have the consumer-grade, click-and-done builders that promise a website in 60 seconds flat. And on the complete other end, you have these incredibly sophisticated, autonomous, agentic AI systems that are literally rewriting how enterprise software is built.
And stuck right in the middle is the human developer, or maybe just the human creator, trying to figure out if they're a coder, a manager, I don't know, just a really glorified spell checker.
That's a good way to put it.
That's the identity crisis a lot of us are feeling right now. So our mission for this deep dive is to help you, the listener, figure out where you fit in this new world. Are you a prompter? Are you a strategist? Or are you a supervisor of a digital workforce?
A manager of bots.
Exactly. We've got a stack of sources today that is honestly a little intimidating, from rigorous academic papers on Arquisive to hands-on reviews from the Beehive blog and some fascinating YouTube experiments. We're going to try to parse the hype from the production-ready tools.
And I think we should start where most people start their journey, the consumer landscape. The tools that promise to take your idea and put it on the web before you've finished your morning coffee.
Let's do it. Let's unpack this. We've got this really comprehensive review from the Beehive blog by New Permittal. She went down the absolute rabbit hole of AI website builders. I mean, she tested everything.
Yeah, I saw that one. It was exhaustive.
It really was. And she makes this analogy that I think is just perfect for anyone who remembers the early 2000s. She compares building a website back then to burning a CD.
Oh, the nostalgia hits hard with that one. I can hear the whirring of the disk drive and the smell of the plastic.
Right. You had to manually select every single track. You had to figure out the order so the flow was just right. You couldn't put the slow ballad right after the heavy metal track.
You'd ruin the vibe.
It'd ruin the vibe. You had to burn it at 1x speed so it didn't glitch out.
Yep.
And then you had to write on the label with a Sharpie. It was manual. It was slow. It was prone to error. But, and this is the key, it was deeply personal.
That's the thing, is an active curation. You were building something piece by piece with a very specific intent, a specific person you were giving it to, maybe?
Exactly. And she says using these AI builders in 2026 is like using an AI playlist generator, where you just type sad rainy day jazz into Spotify and it spits out 50 songs.
And it's pretty good, usually.
It's good. It's instant. It's efficient. The transitions are smooth. But does it have a soul? That's the big question she poses.
It creates a feeling of the thing without the being of the thing. It's a simulation of taste, not actual taste.
The simulation of taste. I like that. So looking at the top contenders she tested, there are some clear winners and losers depending on what you actually need. The standout for creators, apparently, is Beehive itself.
Which is interesting, right? Because Beehive isn't historically a website builder.
Yeah.
They started as a newsletter platform. That's their core.
So how does that give them an edge?
Well, think about the biggest problem with building a website from scratch. It's the blank page problem. You open up Wix or Squarespace, and you're staring at a blank white square.
Yeah.
The AI pops up and asks you, what is your tone? What is your brand?
Oh, I hate that. It's like trying to write a dating profile. I guess I'm fun. Professional but approachable. It's impossible.
It's totally impossible. And you just end up putting in cliches. Beehive solves this by cheating in the best possible way. It reads your past content.
Oh, that's smart.
It's brilliant. If you've been writing newsletters on their platform for a year, the AI already knows your voice.
Yeah.
It knows your topics. It knows if you use Oxford commas or if you pepper your writing with emojis. It knows your style.
So it's not starting from zero. It's starting from you.
Exactly. So when it builds your landing page, it's not just using generic lorem ipsum or that awful corporate speak like, we leverage synergies to create value.
Ah, the worst.
It's using your tone. Middle mentioned it unifies the newsletter and the website under one roof, which for a creator, a media brand, that's huge.
Yeah.
It's a single source of truth for your voice.
That makes a ton of sense. It creates a consistent universe for your audience. But then you have the heavyweights like Wix AI. They've been in the game for a long time. They're aiming for the small business owner who needs, a lot of visual variety.
Right, the classic SMB market.
But the critique here in the review is pretty sharp. Middle calls it dashboard clutter.
Dashboard clutter is the bane of my existence. It's a very specific phenomenon. These platforms, they want to be everything to everyone. So they add feature after feature after feature. Then they layer AI on top of it.
So what does that look like in practice?
You end up with this interface where the AI creates something in a few seconds, which is great. But if you want to change one little thing, like the color of a button,
It's a nightmare.
you have to navigate through 4,000 manual options. It's that feeling where the tool offers you so many choices, you feel like you need a pilot's license just to change the font size.
I know that feeling all too well.
Right. And she noted that despite the code-free promise, when you want precise control, you just hit a wall. You end up fighting the AI. You say, move this 5 pixels to the left. And the AI says, I can't do that because of the underlying grid structure that I created. It's what we call a leaky abstraction.
So the simplicity is an illusion.
It is. The initial generation is simple, but any refinement is incredibly complex. That's the trade-off. Flexibility usually breeds complexity.
Okay, so if you want something that just works and is incredibly cheap, the review pointed to Hostinger. It's the budget option, something like $12 a month.
Hostinger is the fast food of website builders. And I don't mean that as an insult.
I get that. Sometimes you just need a burger.
Exactly. It's cheap, it's consistent, it's fast. It's perfect for a quick portfolio, a local restaurant menu, something simple. But the review did flag it as being pretty weak on deep SEO control.
Which really matters if you're trying to build a real business. You can't just look good. You have to be found. If you can't control your canonical tags or your schema markup.
You're invisible to Google. You might as well not exist. So it's great for a digital business card, but probably not for a serious online store or a blog you want to rank.
So that covers the easy-to-use end of the spectrum. Now, for the designers listening who are probably rolling your eyes at these click-button tools, there's Webflow. The review calls it the designer's AI.
And that's a good description.
Webflow has always been for the pros. How does their AI integration differ from something like Hostinger?
Well, Webflow has never been afraid of complexity. It demands you understand how the web actually works. It doesn't hide the box model.
Yeah.
The fundamental idea that every single element on a web page is a box with padding, margins, and borders.
Right, the fundamentals.
The fundamentals. Their AI doesn't just do it for you. It helps you navigate that complexity. It's a co-pilot, not an autopilot.
Yeah.
It might suggest a layout, but you're still the one who has to connect all the pieces.
So it's slower.
Much slower and a way steeper learning curve. But the payoff is that you get pixel-perfect control. It's for the artisan, the craftsperson, not the person in a rush.
And then we have the weird ones. The review mentioned Chariot and Emergent. These aren't drag and drop at all. They're chat-based. You literally argue with a chatbot until it fixes the padding.
Argue is probably the right word. It's a conversational interface for what is a fundamentally visual task.
Walk me through that. How does that even work?
So instead of clicking a button and dragging it with your mouse, you type into a chat window, make the logo bigger,
Okay.
and The AI makes it huge, like taking up half the page. So you type, no, not that big, make it smaller, and it makes it microscopically tiny. You say move it to the left, and it moves it to the complete other side of the screen.
That sounds infuriating. I think I'd lose my mind.
It sounds futuristic on paper, but in practice, for visual tasks, language is a very low bandwidth interface. Trying to describe spatial balance or a pleasing off-center alignment to a bot is like trying to tell someone how to hang a picture frame over the phone while you're blindfolded.
A little to the left. No, my left.
Yeah.
That seemed just too far.
Exactly. It's just not the right tool for the job. Which brings up a really crucial rule mentioned in the Chilled Sites report, the 30% rule. I think this is a really helpful mental model for our listeners to take away.
The 30% rule. Okay, what's that?
This is a vital heuristic. If you are going to use any of these tools effectively, you need to accept the 30% rule. The idea is that AI should handle about 30% of the workload, no more.
And which 30% is that?
The boring part, the technical setup, the boilerplate code, the repetitive structuring, the getting it on the screen part,
Yeah.
the remaining 70%. That has to be human judgment, creative refinement, and what we call strategic design.
So if you try to make AI do 100% of the work.
You get a generic, soulless product. You get the AI playlist. It's technically correct, but it has no point of view.
We actually have a perfect case study of this man versus machine dynamic. There's a YouTube experiment by Chris from the Self-Made Web Designer channel. He decided to go head-to-head with the AI. This wasn't just a review, it was a cage match.
I love this experiment. It was so well done. It brought actual data to the feelings we all have about design. It wasn't just, I like this one better.
Exactly. The setup was a single, clear brief. Build a homepage for a fictional AI sauce company called NeuroNests. And he, a human designer, competed against Figma Make, Lovable, Hostinger, and Webflower's AI.
And crucially, they had a human judge, Derek, who was another professional designer. He was scoring them blind on design, UX, originality, and just the overall feel.
So let's talk about the results, because they were, well, some were surprising, some were not. Figma Make, which everyone hyped up as the future of design, scored an 18.5 out of 40.
That is devastatingly average. Actually, it's below average. That's a D-.
It's not good. Why did it fail so hard?
The judge's feedback was that it followed the brief too perfectly. It was compliant, it had a hero section, it had a feature list, it had a footer. Check, check, check. But it had zero personality. It was functional but incredibly boring. It looked like a template of a template.
And Lovable, which is another big name in the space, scored even lower at 16.5. And the judge said it looked almost identical to the Figma one.
And this is what we call mode collapse in AI design. These models were all trained on the same data sets of good sauce websites from sites like Dribbble or AllWords. So when you ask them to make one, they all converge on the exact same statistical average.
So they're all just copying the same homework.
They all read the same textbook and refuse to deviate. There's no originality.
But Hostinger, the budget tool we talked about earlier, actually surprised the judge. It scored a 25.5 out of 40.
Yeah. It threw in some really slick animations and micro interactions that the others didn't even attempt. When you hovered over a button, it did something interesting. It felt a bit more alive. It seems their model is tuned to add a bit of razzle-dazzle by default.
A little bit of flair. But drumroll, please. The human designer, Chris himself.
The human scored 31.5 out of 40, the clear winner. It wasn't even close.
And this is the most important part for everyone listening. Why did the human win? It wasn't because the code was cleaner or the colors were objectively brighter. It was storytelling.
Precisely. The AI tools took the content and they just grouped it logically. Here's a list of features. Here are the testimonials. Here is the footer. It was a checklist. The human designer guided the user through an emotional narrative, a journey down the page.
Can you give us a concrete example of that difference?
Sure. The AI puts the price right next to the features. It's illogical, right? Feature A cost X dollars. But the human designer, Chris, he realized that NeuroNests is a complex new product. The user doesn't even know if they need it yet.
So showing them the price immediately would just scare them away.
Exactly. So he built a narrative flow. First, he used a headline that acknowledged the user's biggest pain point to build empathy. Then he introduced the solution in simple terms. Then he showed social proof testimonials, logos to build trust. Then, and only then, did he show the price.
He anticipated the user's emotional state at each scroll depth.
He anticipated what the user was feeling and thinking at each step. AI organizes information. Humans design experiences. That's the difference.
That validates the Chilled Sites report perfectly. They did a cost analysis over 5 years comparing an AI builder to a human agency. An AI builder costs about $1,800 total. a human designer or agency, about $17,000. That is a massive difference in cost.
It's an order of magnitude.
Yeah,
And you can see why a small business would be tempted.
of course. But the report concluded that while AI wins on speed, we're talking seconds versus weeks in cost, humans win on strategic design thinking and unique brand expression.
Which are the things that actually matter for long-term success.
So the takeaway seems to be, if you are, say, a plumber and you need a website that just says, I fix pipes, here's my phone number, save the $15,000 and use the AI.
Absolutely. Speed and utility win in that scenario. Don't overthink it.
But if you are a brand trying to disrupt a market, trying to build an emotional connection with your audience,
The AI is going to make you look like everyone else. And in a crowded market, looking and sounding like everyone else is a death sentence.
so that's the consumer side. It's a tool for speed, not for soul. But let's go deeper now. Let's leave the drag and drop world and talk about what's happening in the enterprise. Because big companies aren't using Wix to run their mission-critical applications. They're trying to automate the engineer.
This is where we move from generative AI to agentic AI.
Yeah.
And that distinction is absolutely critical for understanding what's coming next. We've got a great paper from Archive titled Architectures for Building Agentic AI that breaks this down really well.
Okay, let's unpack that. What is the actual practical difference between a text-to-website generator and an agent?
Think of generative AI, like a ChatGPT, as a really, really smart improv actor. You give it a line, and it predicts the next best line based on everything it's ever seen. It's reactive,
It's a pattern matcher.
a phenomenal pattern matcher.
Yeah.
But it doesn't really know what it's doing in a deeper sense. It just knows what is statistically likely to come next.
Right.
Agentic AI is different. The paper describes it as following a BDI model: belief, desire, intention.
Belief, desire, intention. That sounds almost philosophical for a piece of software.
It does, but it's very practical engineering. Belief is what the agent knows about the current state of the world, its knowledge base. So I believe the user database is currently empty.
Okay, it's perception of reality.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Desire is the ultimate goal. I want the user to be able to log in successfully. And intention is the plan it forms to get from its belief to its desire. To do that, I will first need to create a database table, then write the login form, then add validation.
And most importantly, it has tools it can use to execute that plan, right? It's not just generating text.
Exactly. It isn't just generating text about code. The paper describes a key component called a router. The router is like the agent's brain that decides which tool to use for which part of the plan.
What kind of tools?
It could be anything. It can say, I need to check the database documentation for the correct syntax. And it will go use a search engine tool on the internal company wiki. Then it might say, I need to calculate the potential server load, and it uses a calculator tool. Or, most importantly, it could use a code execution tool.
So instead of just writing code and handing it to a human, it can say, I need to check the API documentation, go read it, then write the code, then run the code in a test environment to see if it works. And if it fails, it can read the error message and try to fix it.
Exactly. It has an autonomous feedback loop. And the architecture to make this safe is fascinating, which is crucial for enterprise.
Yeah.
You can't just let an AI run wild on your systems. And that brings in the concept of the sandbox.
The sandbox sounds like where kids play, but in software, it's more like a bomb defusal chamber, right?
That is a great analogy.
Yeah.
Imagine you tell an agent, clean up the user database. If that agent makes a mistake in its code, it could delete your entire customer list. Game over.
Yeah, that's a bad day.
You do not, under any circumstances, let the AI run code directly on your production server. The sandbox is a digital twin, a safe, isolated environment that perfectly mimics your real server. The agent writes the code, runs it in the twin, and the system checks for side effects, like did it try to delete a database or access a file it shouldn't have?
And only if it passes all those safety checks does it get promoted to the real world.
Exactly. Which leads us directly to the AI for UI paper from EdgeVerve and Infosys. This feels like the adult in the room compared to the consumer builders we just talked about. They aren't trying to make a pretty landing page for a coffee shop. They are trying to build complex, enterprise-grade applications.
The problem they're solving is massive. Most AI-generated code is, as you said, prototype quality. It looks right on the surface, but it lacks authentication, input validation, security compliance, all the boring, hard stuff that actually makes software work in the real world.
It's the difference between a movie set building and a real building. One looks good on camera, the other you can actually live in. AI for UI is designed to bridge that gap.
And they have a really cool innovation they talk about called Figma Grammar. Tell us about that.
So usually when you give a design file to an AI, you're essentially giving it a screenshot. You're saying, make something that looks like this. But a screenshot doesn't tell you how the button works. It doesn't tell you that this button must be disabled until the user enters a valid email address in the field above.
It's just pixels. It has no logic, no intent.
Exactly. Figma Grammar is a system for embedding the instruction manual inside the design file itself. Instead of just showing the AI a picture of a button, the designer attaches a detailed, structured instruction manual to the button component in Figma that explains its validation rules, its API endpoint, and its business logic.
So the designer is actually doing a bit of like logic definition inside the design tool. They're annotating the design with rules.
Yes, it removes the ambiguity. The AI doesn't have to guess what the button does. It's told explicitly. And they pair this with something they call domain-aware knowledge graphs.
Okay, that sounds incredibly jargon heavy. Break that down for us. What is that?
Okay, imagine a massive banking application with 500 different screens. If a product manager decides to change a data definition on screen 1, say, you change username to full name, that one small change might break a report on screen 50 that expects the old username field.
Right. A human senior engineer kind of keeps a mental map of all those connections, hopefully.
A senior engineer does. A
Yeah.
junior engineer usually breaks it. The knowledge graph gives that senior engineer's mental map to the AI. It's a system that tracks all the relationships and dependencies across the entire application, not just the one file the AI is looking at.
So it knows that if it changes the login screen component, it also needs to update the user profile page and the admin dashboard.
That's it. It has system-level awareness. That's the difference between a junior dev who just follows tickets and breaks things and a senior dev who understands the architecture.
So how does the workflow for AI for UI actually play out? It's not just click generate, right?
No, it's a very rigorous pipeline. It starts with an RFC, request for change, just like a real mature engineering team. Everything is documented and tracked.
Start.
Then a planner agent takes that RFC and strategizes the execution plan. I'll need to modify these three components and create a new database migration. Then a coder agent writes the actual code. After that, a reviewer agent checks it against industry standards, security best practices, and so on.
And then the final step.
The final and maybe most important step is a compilation integrity module. This is a layered check. It first checks for syntax errors, then dependency errors, and then it tries to actually build the whole application. It's a multi-stage verification process to make sure the code actually runs.
And the numbers they reported here are impressive. The paper claims an 87.1% compilation success rate on the first try.
Which is huge.
They compared it to competitors like Gemini and Sonnet agents, which were hovering around 46% to 70%. That is a massive gap in reliability.
It is. And platform compatibility, meaning the generated code worked across different systems, was over 97%. This represents a fundamental shift in how we work with these systems. We're moving from human in the loop, where the human is doing the work with some AI help,
Like a co-pilot.
to human on the loop.
Human on the loop. So we're the supervisors. We define the grammar in Figma. We approve the RFC. We review the final output. But the messy middle part, the actual coding and compiling and testing, is fully autonomous.
Correct. But this raises a massive, massive question. Do we actually trust it?
That is the perfect segue to our next segment, the trust gap. Because it's one thing for a paper to report success rates, it's another for a developer on a deadline to actually rely on this stuff. We have this great report from Sonar that asks developers exactly that. Do you actually trust this stuff?
And the answers are really nuanced.
Right.
Developers are, above all, pragmatic. They don't care about the hype. They care about what works.
Mhm.
And the data shows that they love AI for greenfield projects, making new things from scratch.
Right.
There's high trust for tasks like writing documentation, 74% found it effective, and generating unit tests, 59% effective.
Which makes sense. Writing docs and tests is tedious, repetitive work. If the AI can do it, great. But where does that trust fall off a cliff?
Refactoring. Only 43% found it effective for refactoring or optimizing existing code. And this is the paradox of AI development right now. AI is great at making new things, but it struggles to understand, maintain, or fix old things. And let's be honest, 90% of a professional developer's job is maintaining old code.
That's a huge disconnect. And there was another stat in that Sonar report about toil that really stuck out to me.
Oh, this one was fascinating.
It said that users who use AI multiple times per day report more toil, more frustrating manual work, 44% of them, than those who only use it occasionally, which was 34%. That seems completely backwards. Shouldn't more AI use lead to less toil?
You would absolutely think so. But think about the workflow it creates. If you use an AI tool to generate 500 lines of complex code in 10 seconds, that feels like a superpower. But you, the human, now have a new job.
And reading and understanding someone else's code is often much harder than writing it yourself.
Much, much harder. When you write code, you build a mental model of how it works as you go. When you review AI-generated code, you have to reverse engineer its logic, its assumptions, its potential edge cases. We've accelerated code generation, but that just moved the bottleneck downstream to code review.
So we're not eliminating work, we're just changing the nature of the work.
We're drowning in AI-generated code that we now have to meticulously verify. We've traded writer's block for reader's fatigue.
That's a great way to put it. And there's another really important layer to this trust gap, and that's accessibility. We have a study here from Feed11Y titled Human, or LLM, a comparative study on accessible code generation.
This is so critical because accessibility isn't just a nice-to-have feature. In many places, it's a legal requirement, and it's always a moral imperative. You have to build for everyone.
Of course.
The study found something fascinating and a bit contradictory. LLMs like GPT-4 are actually better than the average human developer at the basics of accessibility.
Basics like what? Adding alt text for images.
Exactly. Color contrast checks, adding alt text. Simple, easy to forget things. Humans are lazy or forgetful. We skip the alt text all the time. The AI is pretty diligent about it. It gets a B+ on the easy stuff.
Okay, so what's the bad news?
The bad news is that when it comes to ARIA attributes, these are the complex tags that tell screen readers how to navigate a complex interface, like this is a modal pop-up or this is a multi-level navigation menu. The LLMs fail hard, catastrophically.
How do they fail? What do they do wrong?
They hallucinate. They literally make up ARIA attributes that don't exist, or they use real ones redundantly and incorrectly. So a screen reader might get totally confused because the AI has added 3 different conflicting tags, all saying this is a button. It creates a terrible, unusable experience for users with disabilities.
So it's confident, but it's confidently wrong.
Exactly, which is the most dangerous state for an AI to be in. So how does this study, Feed11Y, propose to fix this?
Right, what's the solution?
They use that REACT approach we mentioned earlier, Reason plus Act. It's a feedback loop. Instead of just generating the code and calling it a day, the agent takes a second step. It generates the code, then it runs an automated accessibility checker on that code, like the IBM Equal Access tool.
So it grades its own homework.
It grades its own homework. It reads the error report from the checker, which might say error, missing ARIA label on this element, and then it goes back and fixes its own code based on that feedback.
And what's the result of that two-step process?
The result is that it consistently outperforms human-written code when using this feedback loop. It's not that the AI is inherently bad at accessibility, it's that it needs a supervisor, even if that supervisor is just another piece of software running a check.
That is a recurring theme today, isn't it? The feedback loop. The AI, on its own, is a brilliant but flawed intern. It needs constant supervision and feedback to be truly effective.
That's the perfect analogy.
Which brings us to our final segment. We've talked about AI writing code. We've talked about AI reviewing code for bugs and accessibility. Now, let's talk about AI experiencing the code.
This is where things get really wild.
Yeah.
This is the Vibe Design Framework.
Vibe design. This comes from a paper presented at the Hawaii International Conference on System Sciences, or HICSS, titled Human-in-the-Loop AI Agents for UI Design. It introduces the concept of simulating the user before the product even exists.
Think about how user testing works now. It's slow, it's expensive, you have to recruit real people, schedule interviews, pay them for their time, sit and watch them use your prototype.
It's a bottleneck.
It's essential, but it's a pain.
This framework proposes using user agents to short-circuit that process. You create a persona in the system, say, user A is a technophobic retiree from Florida who struggles with small fonts, or user B is a power user millennial from New York who values efficiency above all else.
And then you just let these AI agents loose on your Figma prototype. Effectively, yes. The system has a researcher agent that interviews your user agents about the design. It'll show them a screen and ask, did you find the checkout button easy to see? And the retiree agent might respond, no, the font was too small and the color didn't stand out.
That sounds incredibly convenient, but is it accurate? Can a chatbot really simulate a technophobe? It feels like it might just give you generic feedback.
That is the critical question, and that's what the researchers tested. And the finding is crucial for anyone listening who wants to try this. If you just give the AI a generic demographic 50-year-old male from Ohio, the results are mediocre. It gives you bland, predictable feedback.
Okay, so what's the secret?
The secret is data. The system works best if you feed the agent real interview transcripts from past user research sessions with actual people who fit that persona.
So it's not just making up a persona, it's acting based on a real person's previously recorded thoughts and behaviors.
Exactly. It's not simulating a retiree, it's simulating that specific retiree you interviewed last month. And when they did that, the interview-based agents achieved a 95.2% coverage of real usability issues when compared to a fresh round of actual human testing.
Wow. So it's almost as good as the real thing, but you can do it instantly.
It means if you have good qualitative data, you can essentially clone your users, digitally speaking, and test your designs thousands of times in seconds, trying out every possible variation.
That is absolutely mind-blowing. It implies we are moving toward a world where AI writes the code, AI reviews the code for bugs, and then AI tests the code as a simulated user.
It's a completely closed loop.
But where does the human fit in all of this? It sounds like we're being designed out of the system. We found a great discussion on this on Reddit and in the Chilled Sites analysis, and they converged on this idea of the sandwich workflow. I think this is the practical, actionable takeaway for our listeners.
The sandwich workflow is the perfect mental model for working in 2026. It has 3 layers. Phase 1 is the bottom bun. AI builds the MVP. The speed, the structure, the boilerplate. Do not waste a human's time typing diff tags.
Let the robot do the grunt work.
Let the robot do the grunt work. Phase 2 is the filling, the most important part. That is the human. You come in and validate the business model, you inject the vibe, you define the strategy, you do the storytelling we talked about with the NeuroNest homepage.
So AI handles the GUI, the graphical user interface, but humans handle the interaction design and the core strategy.
Precisely. And phase 3 is the top bun. Human designers and engineers take over again for the complex custom work, the deep integrations, and adding that final layer of soul. You finish it and ship it.
I love that model. So let's bring this all home. We have covered a lot of ground today. From simple website builders to fully autonomous agents. What does this all mean for our listener, the learner? What should they be doing tomorrow?
I think we can break it down into 3 clear paths. Path 1. If you are a hobbyist, a creator, a small business owner, use the tools like Beehive or Hostinger. They're amazing, but, and this is a big preach, do not rely on them for the story. You have to bring the narrative. The AI will give you a clean, functional site, but it will be boring unless you inject your unique personality into it.
Okay. And path 2, if you are working in an enterprise setting.
You need to be looking at these agentic architectures like AI for UI. You cannot just use a generic chatbot and hope for the best. You need strict grammar, you need sandboxing, and you need that human-on-the-loop workflow. The goal is not just to automate generation, it's to automate verification.
And finally, for the developers, the people who are actually writing code today.
Embrace the toil shift. The nature of your work is changing. Use AI for documentation and for generating tests. Honestly, it's probably better and more thorough than you are that stuff. But keep your hands on the wheel for refactoring, for architecture, for the big picture decisions, and for the love of code, use automated accessibility checkers, because the AI will lie to you about ARIA tags.
It has been quite a journey today, from English is the hottest new programming language to simulated retirees are now testing our apps.
It really has. And I want to leave the listeners with a final provocative thought to chew on. We talked about this closed loop AI writing, AI reviewing, AI testing.
Here's where it gets really interesting and maybe a little scary.
If AI agents can write the code and other AI agents, these simulated users, can test the code and tell the first agent if it's good or not, are we approaching a closed loop where software can literally evolve all by itself without us?
A kind of digital evolution.
Or is the human in the loop, the one who defines the vibe and the soul, the only thing keeping the digital world from becoming an endless, optimized, but ultimately meaningless hallucination of a user interface?
That is slightly terrifying and incredibly fascinating.
Yeah.
Is the human sense of purpose the only thing anchoring our digital reality to actual reality?
That is the question for 2027, I think.
Wow. Okay. Something to mull over while you are building your next website. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. As always, check the show notes for a complete breakdown of all the tools and papers we discussed today. We will see you in the next deep dive.
Goodbye, everyone. Keep learning.